Welcome to the Diversity Project Menopause for Line Managers webinar. This follows previous webinars on everything from mental health, nutrition and exercise in menopause, and men in menopause, which you can watch on demand. We're very happy to see you here. Thank you for attending today. We hope you find this session helpful. My name's Emma Arms, Marketing Manager at Viva Investors and one of the Menopause workstream. From Julius Baer International, we are joined by David Derlacher, CEO, Ken McCracken, Head of Conduct, and Monique King, Head of Risk. And from Aviva, we welcome Judith Grange, Leader Advice Partner in the People function. Monique, unfortunately, is having some issues with her Wi-Fi today, so we can't see her lovely face. She's dialed in though, and she leads the Diversity Project's Menopause workstream. Some of you will have seen her telling her story on previous webinars. David is our workstream sponsor, and Ken is Monique's previous manager who supported and protected her during some difficult times of her menopause journey. Judith's going to give us some real life examples of how people can be impacted at work with menopause symptoms. Thank you all for joining our panel today. In this online event, we aim to cover what companies and line managers in particular can do to support those impacted by menopause at work and why it's important they do so. Please do post your questions in the chat area and we hope to respond towards the end of this webinar. David, as our sponsor, I'd like to ask you why you think it's important to have a work stream for this often taboo subject.
Thank you. It is a good question, especially given that menopause is not exactly something that happens only to a small number of people. It is something that will happen to over half of the world's population. So you might be right in asking why on earth you would have a work stream dedicated to something that is actually a majority topic. I think it is because you say it is a taboo subject. And a taboo subject, not just because guys don't find it easy to talk about, or also because women don't find it easy to talk about as well. It is not a topic that is quickly diagnosed by doctors. It's not a topic that all insurers have embraced. It is a topic that actually needs the spotlight to be shone on it. It is a topic that needs to have debate and discussion, not just amongst us within the industry, but also amongst Parliament. So it is fantastic that we've got a work stream. It is great that you have joined us for this afternoon's discussion. I hope you will be challenged and learn something from it.
Thank you, David. That's all very true. And according to the ONS, approximately 130,000 people in financial services are dealing with menopause transition at any one time. Why do you think it is important for companies to support them?
I think it's important for two reasons. On the negative side, 9 out of 10 people who go through menopause describe it as having a real challenge on their day-to-day work. And so it is important that they are supported in that they feel as though it's a conversation they can bring up, and companies feel as though that is a conversation that they can have. On the negative side, also, we see people leaving the industry in financial services because of menopause, potentially because that brain fog or the loss of self-confidence or one of many different symptoms has led them to feeling as though they can no longer perform in the way that they used to have, and they therefore walk away from an industry that they may have loved and been good at. On the positive side, I think it is a really important topic for us to engage with, not just to deal with the negative sides, but to also see that well-being is championed, that well-being leads to positive engagement. It leads to fitness in the workplace, regardless of what people go through. And that engagement with well-being enables people to feel valued as employees, regardless of their gender or what stage of life they are or what they may be going through, including menopause. So it is a really important topic for us as an industry, but across all industries, it is an important topic.
Thank you, David. And I think from a business perspective, you're quite right. And with the great resignation at the minute, you know, companies can't afford to lose valuable people. And often with a few tweaks in the workplace, people can perform just as they wanted to, just as they did before. So it is really important that companies and managers get involved to help and support them. So Judith, as a leader advice partner in the people function, you must see cases of menopause impacting people at work. Can you give us an idea of how line managers can support them, please?
Yes, thanks, Emma. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, wonderful, thank you. Yeah, to echo what David said, and thanks, David, for setting out that. It is really helpful summary of why it's important to tackle this. So I work as a leader advice partner at Aviva. So we, as the name suggests, support leaders. We also support individuals through our resolution process, but we've found that there is an awful lot of people in the workforce. We have a lot of people between the age of 45 and 55 in particular. And we started to notice that, you know, females were leaving the business and quite senior females who were having quite a big drop in confidence. So I've got a couple of examples which I've anonymised, which reflect some of the real life challenges the managers face. So my first is quite a senior female leader who was aged 49. She was operating in a professional business area. She found herself getting brain fog, forgetting what she was saying, losing her train of thought, sort of standing up in a meeting and just having a blank moment, clearly hugely embarrassing. And because she wasn't sharing what was going on, or she didn't really know what was going on, you know, people were wondering what on earth was the matter with her, and was it a performance concern? She'd been struggling with sleep, hot flushes, and really found all of that very embarrassing. Felt like everybody was watching her. They could see she was having a hot flash, you know, and maybe they couldn't, but this is how very much real how it was for her. So as a result, very high performer suddenly has a confidence drop, and we talk about imposter syndrome, which tends to be experienced more by females, but that was certainly where this lady was at the time. She felt she wasn't good enough and she should consider resigning, in fact, to the point of writing a resignation letter and handing over to somebody younger. But obviously that idea would upset her, as she loved her job and she was very successful and she didn't want to leave or take a step back. So we spoke to her leader about the situation and how she was feeling. And we said, you know, that the leader was a male and didn't know a huge amount about menopause, a bit younger, so his partner wasn't going through it at the time. So we sort of pointed him towards some menopause awareness training that we have got for line leaders. That resource is not yet compulsory for all line leaders, but we're looking at trying to make it part of their essential learning. So we also provide every employee and their partner now at Aviva with a free PEPI app. They are menopause experts and it's an absolutely fantastic resource. So we advise the individual to download the PEPI app, have a consultation, get a report from PEPI, which she can then go to her GP to discuss potential solutions, HRT wise, or if that's not applicable because there's some health reason why she can't take HRT, then other ways of looking and dealing with her symptoms. We then advised her and the leader to sit down together and discuss and complete a workplace adjustment passport, which we use for people with disabilities or challenges at work, whether that's neurodiversity or whether it's menopause or whether it's a disability, and to note down the reasonable adjustments that she required, because it's different for everybody, to help her be the best at work. And as a result of that, you know, we worked, it took time, but we got her back to a place where her confidence was built up. She hadn't resigned. She was getting back to her normal performing self. So that's an example of quite a senior person, Emma.
Well, that's brilliant to hear that there was a positive outcome for that person, but also for Aviva, who didn't then lose her from the workforce, which is really important. Thanks for giving us that example, Judith. So bringing in Monique, I know you feel better now, but can you tell me a little bit about how perimenopause symptoms impacted you negatively at one stage, please?
Yeah, thanks, Emma. I think as I've shared before, my experience was for me quite a shock. I didn't know I was going through perimenopause. I just was very confused as to the symptoms and what was happening. So it started with joint pain, hip problems, etc. But the worst part for me was the anxiety and what resulted in clinical depression. So that is what was debilitating for me. And in the workplace, it makes it extremely hard when you've always been somebody that's been very confident and able to function at a particular level, to suddenly not feeling you're able to do that any longer and just doubt yourself completely.
Yeah, that's just awful. And I think that's a really good point you make, that often we don't know we're experiencing perimenopause. I think there's over 34 symptoms, which can be, you know, everything from the brain fog to itchy skin to the hot flushes, which are a bit of the classic one, but it can also really be detrimental on your mental health. And when you're in that mindset, it's not that easy to think logically and have the confidence to go and get the medical help that you need. And then you've got to think about, well, how is this impacting me at work, and what do I do about that? So how did Ken, who I think was your line manager at the time, help?
Well, I generally don't know what I would have done without Ken, to be honest. I don't think I could have remained in my role or even in employment, to be honest. He was so supportive, and I actually feel so sorry for him, because on the day I just fell apart, I called him in absolute bits, in tears, couldn't even talk. He probably didn't have a clue what I was trying to explain to him. But he just gave me that space and support that I needed. And when I did return to work, I felt that I had his trust, that he would protect me, he would support me, and give me that reassurance that actually I could perform at the level I was before. And really, I didn't know what I needed in terms of support, and Ken would ask, what can I do to help, etc. But it was more that the fact that he was there to support in any way, shape or form that I needed, and to help me kind of back into the workplace, because I was out for some time. And actually, as an organisation, gave me that kind of space that I needed to get myself back together and come back to the office and start working. But I was a different person, something that you have to adjust to. And that's something that Ken really helped me with, that just because today I'm feeling good doesn't mean tomorrow I'm going to feel exactly the same. And that is okay. And to just take it one step at a time and not try to run before I could walk. So I will forever be grateful to Ken for that.
Wow, I think that's amazing that Ken was able to support you in that way. I think anybody who is going through the negative impacts of the menopause could do with a Ken in their workplace. I do know some people have been afraid to let their work know what's going on for fear of being overlooked for promotion or even dismissed. Did you have any concerns along those lines, Monique?
I think at the time, because of the depression, I couldn't even think beyond, putting one foot in front of the other at the time. I think when I've come back to the workplace and learning who I am and how to adjust to what I need, that has kind of planted the seed of doubt that actually, can I do this? Am I good enough? And to Judith's point, the imposter syndrome, that is very, very present, and you have to really work at that. And that's why, for me, having a line manager who's so supportive and understanding gives you that reassurance that you can do that, and actually give you that space that you need, or make the adjustments that you need to make.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I'm glad you didn't have concerns along those lines, because I think, it would have added to that anxiety. But it sounds like that conversation with Ken and then the support that he gave you through that was really important. And, you didn't feel like you were alone, and you felt like you were supported at work and did everything possible between you to get you back into work and feeling confident again. So Ken, when Monique approached you, were you aware of how the symptoms of menopause could impact people negatively, or did you have to do some research?
I'd say yes and no in terms of sort of prior knowledge. I do have some experience through a family member who went through chemical and then surgical menopause in her 30s as a result of treatment for breast cancer. And obviously because of the diagnosis of breast cancer and the reason for the menopause being induced, HRTs, other treatments were not an option for her. So I know what she went through and how it affected her, both sort of the short term and adjusting to it. Judith was describing hot flashes, and I think if you can imagine, a 30-year-old, the level of sort of all eyes on me, having hot flashes in a meeting, that's going to be difficult. And then longer term, as she has progressed, how it's continued to affect her. And so that gave me some idea. And in addition, I have a general understanding. However, as you can imagine, that doesn't give me much more than a broad understanding and appreciation for the impact of such a change. For example, Monique describes how sort of it manifested itself, and that certainly was not something that I would have fully appreciated. Just how significantly an individual could be impacted and how it would manifest itself. So it was a learning experience for me, one that I did have to think about more and look into more.
Yeah, and I'm really sorry to hear about your family member and what she went through. I think it must be awful to have something that is induced like that at a younger age, and really difficult when you can't take the conventional treatment. So I'm really sorry to hear that. So we're going back to Monique. What helped you decide how best to support her?
Well, I think the most important thing was I asked her, and we talked about it. Honestly, I it's not as if, especially towards the beginning, whether we even knew what was going on. And I hope that, I would have done the exact same for anyone in any sort of emotional, mental, physical distress, regardless of what that cause is. I know that whatever she or anyone else is going through, it's going to be personal to them. From my own experience in the past 20 years, I've managed and worked alongside people who have suffered from any range of physical, mental illnesses, family problems, money problems. The list goes on, and everyone has their own story and the things that will impact them. And I think that what I do know is that as much as I may want to, I can't truly know what someone else is going through and how it's affecting them. And the fact is that it is unlikely that I can fix that problem. There's nothing within my power to do there. But what I can do is to listen, to provide some support, and where it's within my control, giving them that control to state how they want to proceed and allow them to set that pace, I think is extremely important. So if Monique needed someone to talk to, if she just needed time to be able to figure it all out, and it was my power, my ability to give that to her, then I was certainly going to do that. I think maybe sometimes line managers may not want to engage in certain issues because they don't know how to fix the problem. But the fact is, you don't have to fix it. You just have to provide support and space for that individual and ensure that they have the tools and the care that they need to take care of themselves.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice, Ken, and you know, you obviously did a great job in supporting Monique. So why do you think it's important that companies and line managers do support those impacted by menopause symptoms?
Well, I think it's important for the reasons that David and Jude sort of outlined earlier. But you know, it's so easy to misjudge how it's going to impact an individual. Sort of slightly off this topic, but hopefully relevant and something that I have strong personal views on. And I don't know how many people will have seen or heard about various studies which looked at bias in how medical professionals assess and treat men and women for pain. And what some studies have shown is that when male and female patients express the same amount of pain, observers viewed female patients' pain as less intense and more likely to benefit from psychotherapy as opposed to medication. And even in one study on the treatment of chronic pain, it showed that women were much more likely to be prescribed sedatives as opposed to pain medication. Now, while it's not directly applicable, I think it's reasonable that if medical professionals are subject to this sort of bias, companies and line managers are going to be certain to underestimate and to sort of provides for in a completely incorrect direction. Add to that the all too common reaction to avoid talking about it because it's not a comfortable topic. And I think, you know, the message that a lot of people would probably get is, you know, you're being too emotional about it, you're making too big of a deal about it, you know, or there must be something else that is going on. And so that support is not there. And then that means that highly qualified and skilled individuals aren't given the opportunity to continue to progress and provide value to the company. And that's a detriment to both the individual, importantly, but also from a company standpoint. You know, if you have individuals that can contribute at a very high level for a number of years, but they're not feeling supported and not feeling capable of continuing to do that, then that is certainly a loss for the company.
Definitely, and that's really interesting. You mentioned that study. You know, lots of colleagues I know who have been to the doctor with menopausal symptoms that might not know they're menopausal symptoms, are often prescribed antidepressants as a first base treatment, which is not what they need at the time. And you know, as we know, experienced people have got a lot to offer in the workplace. So it's great that companies and line managers are now, you know, exploring how they can help support them and keep them in the workplace. Thanks, Ken. So David, after hearing everything the panel has to say, what do you think companies and in particular line managers could do more of to help those impacted by menopause?
Thanks, Sarah. Just to pick up on what Ken was saying, I think that line managers can easily feel as though they need to fix issues and solve problems. It's almost a mindset. Very much it is to support people wherever they are at. So I would suggest starting with making sure that the framework is in place. Make sure that your company has got policies that are supportive, that it has provided the guidance and the line manager training and the awareness so that people have a broad familiarity and it becomes therefore normalized to talk about menopause. Secondly, make sure that there are well-being programs in place. Make sure that you have got not just internally the community of people who are familiar enough to support your line managers, but also the access to specialist support externally that you are able to draw on. Thirdly, make sure that line managers are able to point people in the right direction for that help that they will need. And in some areas, that will need to be getting access more quickly to skilled, trained medical professionals who can help with the diagnosis and help with the specialist support that people need. It may just simply be, as Ken was describing, the flexibility to listen. Make sure that you've got the directions for people to go to for help. And lastly, make sure that you provide flexibility. No two employees are the same. Make sure that you're flexible enough as a line manager to accommodate different people, and to make sure that that accommodation doesn't enable someone to feel as though they're in a minority, that they are treated as an equal partner to the team, regardless of what they face. For all of us, whether we are line managers or not, and agreed, we're all of the people listening in will be line managers. For all of us, engage in the conversation. Stigma is built through people feeling isolated. Ensure that your teams are encouraged to talk about stuff like this. Because if we don't engage in that conversation, if we don't listen, if we don't speak into that silence, people will feel isolated. And the result of that isolation is very harmful and will result in people feeling as though they are poorer contributors to our organizations. Engage in that discussion and make sure that people don't feel isolated and stigmatized.
Thanks, David. That's all very good advice. And I think it does, when you're going through really extreme perimenopausal symptoms, you can feel very lonely. I remember myself, I didn't tell anybody at work because I just felt like it was my issue, and that, you know, I needed to fix it on my own. But I think that, you know, if you can have line manager and company support and policies in place, and it's not the taboo subject that it once was, then they're all things that are going to make great improvements for anybody experiencing those symptoms. And finally, Judith, what would you recommend to those impacted by menopause symptoms at work do in order to get the support they need, please?
Yeah, thanks, Emma, and it's been great to hear from everybody today. So again, echoing what's been said, but my main point is we've done a lot of work in this space at Aviva, and I'm really proud to have been involved in that. And we've got a wellbeing team, but mainly not to be afraid to ask the line manager for help and to discuss it. We're hoping that with people like Davina taking up the baton and having a menopause czar in Parliament and things like that, you know, this is a good time actually to be menopausal. You know, my parents would never have spoken about it, and just expected to get on with it. But we've got a lot of people in the age range of 45 to 55 and lower and higher than those numbers who are going through this. So we absolutely have to support them. So we've obviously got this Peppy app that we would encourage people to use that. We would encourage leaders to do the training and understand more about it. GPs are getting there, some are better than others, but usually if you phone up and ask for a GP who is trained in the menopause, that's the best way to get the best help. And you know, look at talking about any adjustments you need. So whether that's a fan at work, or whether it's to have more toilet breaks, or whether it is to have a time, you know, when you just are having a moment, just let your leader know. Because I think it is just about having that support. And if that's the case and the individual's getting the help they need, then eventually, hopefully, we'll get them right back to where they were, confidence where it needs to be. We need women of menopausal age to have a great resignation of women between a certain age. So we absolutely have to push forward on this now and get people the help that they can get.
Do you have a question we could help you with at all?
I did. I'm looking at putting in a menopause policy or guidance in place. I work for an organisation that has a menopause offering, if you like, with Bupa, so it's fully paid for. You can go and have a chat. And I'm a woman in my early 40s who was always told in her 30s I would have early menopause because of premature ovarian failure, and I've battled like crazy with the NHS to get help. So I started with this great organisation earlier this year, went straight to their menopause service with Bupa, and I'm all sorted and very much on the mend. But so I'm obviously very pro improvements at work and trying to put some kind of policy or guidance support document in place. And I just wondered, are there any resources out there that organizations can tap into to start, you know, addressing this from a, I guess, kind of a more sort of policy and useful guidance point of view?
I don't know if you want me to take that, Emma, in terms of what we've done at Aviva, Claire, and I'm happy to take it offline with you, is we do have a menopause policy. And like I say, we have given everybody this Peppy app, and we have developed this training. So it's like a bunch of different things that we've done. We've sort of tied it in, like I say, with the workplace adjustment stuff. So we've got a page on our intranet at work which runs through all the different places you can get help from, the NHS links, Menopause Help UK, etc., Mind, menopause myths, you know, we've got all of that in one area and a guide. So I mean, I'm happy to have a chat with you offline if that's helpful, but there's definitely lots of resources that you can, you know, just even if you type menopause into the internet and it'll just bring out a whole load of stuff to you. That's the offering we've got.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks, Claire.
Thanks, Judith. I don't know if anyone else wanted to add anything to that for Claire.
Emma, it's Monique. It's just worth saying you referred to the toolkit for line managers that we will be putting on the Diversity Project website. Also, a lot of information already on there. So previous webinars that we've done covering different sections of menopause, let's say, so mental health and menopause, or what is menopause, and then many menopause. But also there's a guide on there that covers the different types of menopause. So as Ken referred to, there's the medically induced menopause. So I think that all helps to build that policy. But I would just say it's okay to have the policy, but you have to live it and breathe it within your organisation. So having the support and making sure you've got the right culture, not just for menopause, but in general, that people feel that they can be open and talk and ask for help. So that's just one piece of kind of advice I would.
Thanks, Monique. That's helpful. I don't know if we just lost the end of what you were saying there, but I think that's all useful advice. And there is a host of information out there on menopause, but I think if you can go to a recognised organisation, then such as the Diversity Project or the NHS, different places like that, then you can ensure that the information you're getting is correct to help you build that policy. So I have been told the chat function is working now, so please do go ahead and post your questions in the chat. But also I can see Kim's here with a question for us.
Hello, yes. Sorry, I was just going to say that the chat was disabled, but I'm quite relatively new to this, but obviously I'm a woman in my 40s. So I had some training yesterday. One of the questions that I had is when somebody comes to you for help, or you see someone that may be struggling within the office environment, is there anywhere, I think the diagnosis of menopause is quite hard to factor. So are there any sort of doctors, because some doctors could just say, oh, you're stressed, put you on some, sleeping tablets or, some other tablets. So I find that it's getting to the actual diagnosis. So are there any doctors, or is there any hospitals? I don't know if Bupa offer that, or anybody's medical companies can offer, actually letting people know, well, this is what you're going through, this is what's happening to you. So it was just a question for the workplace, where to direct people to. So
I will have a little go at answering that initially, and then hand it over to anyone in the panel who might want to help. So you're quite right in that GPs are not always trained, you know, in menopause symptoms, and will not always have the time to spend with somebody on that front. Private health companies, I think some of them, like I've had experience recently with Bupa, although menopause isn't necessarily covered on their policy, and please do your own research on this, if you've got symptoms such as mental health issues or, you know, joint pain, because they don't know at that stage it's menopause, then they will do diagnostic tests and then would hand you over to the primary carer, is what I was told, once they knew it was a menopause issue. But if it's one of those 34 symptoms that you're experiencing and they don't know it's that, then some private providers will look at doing the diagnostic initial tests on that. We're very lucky at Viva. We do have a specialist menopause provider called Peppy, who we can now direct people to, and they have trained menopause nurses, and I know there are menopause clinics across the country. But obviously, some of this has got costs attached. I open that up to anyone else in the panel. Got anything to add to that?
That's really helpful. Thank you.
That's okay.
Emma, it's Monique. I would just agree with your comments about the clinics across the country. As we know, GPs are not required to have mandatory training on menopause, although that is changing for new GPs. And it's very difficult to identify the diagnosis when there's lots of different symptoms. So personally, I was treated by a rheumatologist initially for hip problems. And basically it was perimenopause, but I didn't know. But it was only when I went to see a private medical doctor, so a menopause trained doctor who runs a menopause clinic, did I receive a diagnosis. And I think that that's the challenge for employers, with a lot of the private medical insurance doesn't cover menopause. So not all of the policies do cover. So it's helping individuals to give them the signposting of places that they can go to or consider within your organisation, whether you want to fund that through your private medical insurance or as an ad hoc payment to go and see a menopause doctor.
Yeah, I think that's all spot on, Monique, and it's a shame that that's how things currently are, and hopefully they will improve in the future. But I think, you know, that is where we are at the moment. At least there are specialists available, so that's helpful. It's also good to be aware of the NICE guidelines, which I think say if someone's over 45, they don't need a blood test if they've got menopausal symptoms, because quite often doctors will want to give you blood tests to begin with. So you know, if you can inform your colleagues and with that information, you know, from bona fide sources, then that's really important that they go into that first doctor's appointment with their GP really well informed, if they can be. Does that help, Kim?
Yes, definitely. And sorry, the name that the company you use, was that Peppy?
Yes.
Yes.
Peppy. Okay, thank you.
Peppy, Kim.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
I can see two more hands up, Emma. I can see Ashu's hand up. Don't know if you can speak, Ashu.
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
I'm just asking one question that, we know that, this symptom, and probably we are, as a line manager, we are supporting it. So for internal, we are supporting. So I just want to know that, because there is no policy, like you mentioned that, in many organizations about this, and how long we need to support such, people in the organization from, management side of perspective that, because anyhow, while supporting, we have other people in that, departments to make them understand, how we can make a culture of supporting, and how long we need to support them. So anything, counseling or something which we can we can make it as an optional in the organization, which could help these people to take a stand how to work ahead. So just want to know from that, how we can cope with such kind of situations. It's very, sometimes it makes difficult for us to create such work environment balance in the office, with other colleagues, seeing that supporting this for a long time, such employees.
Yeah, it's difficult to know how long you need to support somebody for, but I mean, I think you just need to have things in place, and counselling. We have an employee assistance program, which I think a lot of companies do have, which is helpful for people to speak to initially, but ultimately they need to be directed to speak to their GP to get the help they need, and to speak about it. So it takes time. It takes time to develop the culture, Ashu, and to get people able to and comfortable talking with it. So it is a journey, but there's lots about it now in the media. So I think it's a journey that people will demand of their employers that they are understood in this space.
I'm sorry, but I couldn't put that question in the chat because chat is disabled for me. I'm very sorry for that.
That's okay, sorry.
Yeah, no,
No problems at all. Thanks for answering that, Judith, and thank you, Ashu. Sital, can you ask us your question, please?
Hi, this is Sital Chima. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes, we can.
Hi. Yeah, I'm 52 and I work for myself, and I've worked in the financial industry, investments, and about 24 years. So I'm going through menopause, but I don't have a boss. and it gets quite scary when you're on stage speaking at a large conference that you've been used to speaking at forever, and you're sweating and dripping with sweat. It's just awful. And I guess that's my problem, and the brain fog thing too. I suddenly cannot remember the word for a basic something, whatever it is, a product, an investment, asset class, or anything. And it drives me nuts. I'm standing up there going, sweating, And yes, I've tried HRT. I did it for a year, but I grew from 7.5 stones to 10.5 stones, which I currently am. So my entire body has changed due to this, and so I can't keep growing, but at the same time now I'm sweating again, so it's just a nightmare. Sorry, I don't know if there's a question out there, but what do you do if you're on your own?
No, feel your pain. I think you have to push for support, but if HRT is not suiting you, then I suppose maybe some of the natural remedies like sage, or something like that to help with the hot flashes. Maybe it's very difficult. You haven't got a boss that's making things difficult for you, but things are difficult for you because you're going through it, right? So yeah, it's difficult. I do appreciate that. Anybody else got any ideas?
I think, Sital, you should be kind to your employee who sounds like it is you, and see a specialist menopause provider, perhaps just as a one-off to help you with that, because you are, if you work for yourself, you are your company, aren't you? So you need to be feeling really well, and totally get it with the brain fog and everything else, but sometimes different types of HRT work or whatever, but those specialist menopause providers are brilliant, and just as a one-off investment, I think it would be really helpful. I don't know if David or Ken or Monique have got anything to add to that might be able to help.
The only thing I would say in addition is try and find some other people who are going through what you are. Because one of the problems, as I said earlier, is isolation, and feeling, okay, you're on the stage, you're delivering a talk, and the brain fog will come up against you. Being part of a community of other people, even if it's not within your workplace, but people who are going through it will know the same sorts of things. They will have maybe techniques or ways in which it just normalizes what you're experiencing. In that environment, actually, you can feel more comfortable being yourself, even when you're going through those symptoms in the public eye. So try and find some other people who you can join with as a community.
Thank you, and that's possibly why I joined today as well, just to be part of it. And I guess the other thing is I've got really beautiful clients, wonderful clients, and I'm just going to tell them I've got a meeting at 2 o'clock with them on video. And rather than last week, I had an in-person meeting with them at a hotel, Pacific Asia Hotel or something, and I was sweating away, and they're going like, you know, I'm just going to say, look, guys, I'm menopausing, because I think that's the best way now to just move forward, because I'm not nervous, I'm not scared, I'm not bad at my job. It's simply that I just keep sweating and growing if I take HRT. So I've just got to laugh with it, I think, at this stage.
I think that is the best approach, being open and transparent. And the good thing, Sital, is that it is such a broad topic of discussion in the media, in our industry, in government, that you can know that even if someone themselves hasn't gone through it, or perhaps is not part of an organization that is championing that conversation, you know that it will not be an unusual thing to mention. Today is really different to where we would have been 30, 40 years, even a decade ago. So feeling comfortable being open about what you're going through is a really important thing.
Yeah, I would agree with that, David. So, Sital, just to say, whenever we have issues with employees at work, we always just say, be open with your leader, because otherwise the leader will make assumptions which aren't the right assumptions. Likewise with your clients, just share it, have a giggle. You can get underwear that will take away the heat, maybe try that as well. But just seriously, just be authentic, and you'll find everybody else is suffering the same things.
Yeah, no, thank you guys. Thanks a lot. It's I have, yeah, that's where I'm at now, to just be open. I mean, the thing is, my 13-year-old son, who's very, very good at not, you know, they're Gen Z these days. They don't want to be racist. They're not racist, and nothing, and they don't swear. They're such good little things. But he gets upset with me if I use the word menopause. He says, "Mummy, you just sound old. Stop it. Don't tell everyone." You know, so so that's the, you know, I don't know. I'm just so I'm thinking I just need to tell everyone. Forget what my son is saying. I need to move forward and just embrace it. Thank you, guys.
Call it a power surge, Sital. It's a power surge. It's not a hot flash. You'll do great. Good luck for this afternoon. Thank you.
Emma, I'm conscious that Paula's had her hand up for a while. Paula Kerr. Yeah. Don't know if you can speak, Paula.
Can you hear me?
Hi, Paula. Yes.
Hi, thank you very much. Just a quick one. So my main thing was just also to say that, do you have any advice? So people who are not used to this conversation, how do you initiate a conversation that without causing offense? And again, around potentially someone's age, someone's behavior, you know, potentially they're not as aware of their symptoms as you might be. So just your advice to managers, if they notice something, or even if they don't notice something, how do you approach the topic?
Yeah, it can be a HR minefield, can't it? Because you don't want to be age discrimination. It's usually better if they volunteer the information to you. And Monique spoke about Ken being a lifesaver. And I think the issue is that, Monique, maybe you can share like some insight on that if you're able to speak.
Yeah, I think it goes back to the culture of an organisation and feeling able to open up and have that open dialogue. So I think I agree with you, Paula, in terms of coming out and asking a direct question, are you menopausal, is not the best way to go about it. But I think having that open dialogue between colleagues, line manager, subordinates, like anyone in the workplace, to have an open culture that you're able to talk. And I found sharing my story helped others to open up as well. So I think case studies of people you know are so powerful. And we've done the same at Julius Baer with mental health. Having people share their stories makes other people kind of feel safe, and that there won't be any negativity as a result of them opening up. So that's what I would suggest in terms of maybe having a few case studies. And again, the line manager training is really helpful to really help that core group of people to set that culture, because culture comes from the top, as we know, tone from the top. But that middle group is so key to continuing to push that culture out and to live and breathe it.
Thanks so much.
And I would echo that as a line manager. You know, I think it's easier to raise those conversations if you're open about your own as well. So if I'm having a bad day, or if there are certain things that are going on in my life that I feel my team would benefit from knowing from, then I will be sure to let them know. And I think hopefully in that way, they know that I'm comfortable sharing. You know, it's not a one-way street. And I think that does go to, you know, what Monique was saying about the culture and the openness, is that it is difficult. If it's a one-way street, you don't build that trust to have someone to proactively approach you. But if they know that it's a two-way street, then you do build that comfort level. And I think within that, there certainly are ways you can say, look, I notice you haven't been yourself, or I noticed that something seems to be bothering you. And if it's something that you feel comfortable talking about, can we, you know, and in particular, if it is something which is impacting performance, I think that is a legitimate line of conversation. To say, like, I know where you generally are in this, you know, and I think that's the way to start the conversation. But it is deeply built into a relationship of trust and openness, I think.
I would back that up 100%. Paula, if you're not in an environment where that tone from the top is clear and that openness is already established, you can, as Ken said, bring up the topic in an easy way. So if you've observed in one of your team members, for instance, brain fog, and that brain fog hadn't been there before, you can easily say, after a conversation in a team meeting, for instance, to that person, look, I noticed, it seemed to me that you became confused in that conversation. I just thought I'd just mention that because it was a bit unusual. How are things going? Was that just my perception? And it just allows a safe space for someone to then say, okay, fine, you know, I've been noticing these symptoms myself, or they can say, well, you know, there's something else that's going on. Maybe they've got insomnia or whatever, or they're just not, their mind is on other things. It enables you to have that frank conversation where you don't need to have got to a point where someone feels they have got to raise something proactively with you. It's normal to share feedback in a trusting environment.
I'm lucky enough to work in an organization that does have that level of comfort, support, and maturity around its colleagues. And that I was just more speaking around. I know that in general, not all companies are quite there yet. Some of these conversations are quite in their infancy, and to people who might be a bit nervous to bring it up, you know, you also mentioned earlier about the whole age-related thing, and how people, you know, we've got this constant society kind of pressure almost to try and be younger all the time, and so having to have this conversation, what does that mean? You know, there's just a lot of elements. So thank you for that. I think it'll be valuable to a lot of people.
No, well, it wasn't so much of a question, and it's actually very much related to the last couple of speakers and Paula's question. But I just wanted to say, I work with Emma and the amazing Judith, the amazing Emma, obviously, at Aviva. And I just wanted to say that one of the things I found was it's actually really, really difficult for the individual to admit it to yourself that there's something going on, because it's really difficult to put your finger on what's wrong, what's creating these challenges for you. And and it's in terms of, you know, the line manager creating that space, creating that trust and that comfortable space to talk is really important. And I would say to line managers, you know, the support I've had from my line managers is that we have regular conversations, and having that regular contact's really important, whether that's every 2 weeks or whether that's every month, but really having that one-to-one where you have got, you feel like your line manager is completely, you know, cleared the desk for you and that time is yours. It's really, really important.
I think that's a really good point, Meenakshi. And as Ken said, you know, it's not just a one-off. It's building that trust, having that relationship with your manager, and feeling like you can open up to them. And it's not an easy thing to talk about. And I think they're all really valid points. So thank you very much for that, and thank you to all the panelists. If people weren't able to get their question in the chat, we can answer them by email. I am happy for you to email me. It's emma.arms, ARMES, @avivainvestors.com, or you can contact us through the Diversity Project, and we will be able to deal with those questions for you. This has been recorded. We will send out the link so you can share with colleagues on demand. And I just want to thank all the panel members and for everybody who dialed in today. We hope you find it helpful and have a good rest of the day.